Hello, and welcome to a new edition of Education is the Best Medicine. And thanks for watching. Remember, community public access TV is your best bet. Believe radio, 24-hour inspirational gospel music. We have a special guest today. I think I told you about him last week. I want the brother to introduce himself, and so I don't butcher his name. And he's going to read a poem about reparations, and we're just going to begin our discussion around a few things.
Hey, how's everybody doing out there? My name is Minhu Aim Ayele, and I'm the author of the book Got Reparations, 21 Questions, 21 Answers, Oakland, California. And I'm going to read you this poem. It's called Reparations, No Money Down. All right. So here we go. I'm trying to see something, family, to get clarity from the start. I keep hearing about this debt that these crackers owe us. But my question specifically is for what part? Our penis, our pussy, our brains, our genes, or our heart? Can money buy us love loss that many gave up on from a coin toss? What sense does a dollar make to millions rotting in a grave? All the mothers and fathers who lost their sons and daughters caught up in a self-hatred craze, a daze, a fog, a haze of war, in exchange for a secret handshake for no longer having to live poor. I have a dream. They killed even the most non-violent amongst us. They'd rather have a schizo nigga running around in a circle, blank-headed and amuck. What the fuck could money do for a miseducated, retarded slave fool? And how do we think we could just use money as a tool? How about no money down for reparations? Are you down? Cool. This would give us a different jewel in which to measure. What is the real treasure to put in our chest, not a beleaguered cesspool? Extra, extra, read all about it. Black people don't want your hush money to make us forget about it. As a matter of fact, we've decided to give everything back. Checkmate, domino, blackjack. Money in our purse without some mace, draws, and toothpaste would be an insult for sure. But all we really need is a restored and regenerated black seed, the ultimate all cure. That natural antidote only a touch of love from God could do. Our ancestors told us that character is more important than gold. Your ka, your ba, the rule. Listen to some soul reasoning, brothers and sisters, for once. Don't go chasing some money only to give it back, a reparations gold pack, and look like a world-class dunce. What's your plan, family? Black family, what's your plan? If money doesn't change your heart towards one another, we'll end up being a dispersed group of losers, seeking other people's approval, singing in some white people's band. Black man, woman, and child, what's your plan? Money is not the real issue at hand, understand? It's our fam, the structure that was broken. Even if money was only a token, where does our family fit in the soaking? So I'll take my reparations with no money down, just to see, is it a debt or a bet to trick us all out of discovering our true humanity? Thank you.
Thank you, Black man. I've been carrying that poem around since I met you. We've always had contact in the community and finally had a really down conversation before the show. And I really appreciate that. And I kind of want to set the stage by saying thank you, first of all, for coming. And I think that, this is a really important topic. I was really had a mixed feeling about reparations and definition. The making of amends for a wrong one has done by paying money to or otherwise helping those who have been wronged. So I like your poem because reparation doesn't necessarily mean a financial disbursement, but it does mean acknowledgement of a wrong done.
Absolutely.
And we begin, as we've always begun these conversations, in 1619 with slavery, with the advent of the Civil War, with then Jim Crow, and then the myriad things that take us to the civil rights movement. And we are now in 2025, and we appears that we are going back. Want to kind of ask you what motivates you to write the poem and the book, and we'll take it from there.
Sure. Well, in 2021, there was a commission, California Commission on reparations put together, and they were supposed to study it for a year. It ended up going into another year. Mm-hmm. And then there also was a commission in San Francisco, reparations task force in San Francisco, that was also put together in TAN. Some of those same people were sitting on the both commissions, right? Okay. So I attended the task force meeting in the Fillmore, San Francisco. And, I already had my ideas. I have already written a couple of books in relation to sustainable community development in Black communities. And so I wanted to, bring that understanding to the table for some of the people sitting on the board and also the audience, some of the folks that's also doing.
So make sure we get your website for the book.
Absolutely.
I want people to get a copy, and I want my signed copy. And I'm
gonna
get
absolutely.
Well, and so the discussions are around. We want people to be educated and informed in a way that reflects our needs and values and the importance of our voice in this discussion.
Yes, I'll definitely give my website at the end, make sure I get it. I can give it now.
Oh yeah, please give it now.
Sure. My website is www.ujamavillages.com. I'm messing it up.
That's okay.
Let me start over. Okay. www.ujamavillages.wix.com/ujamaavillage. So it's a Wix account, but you can go there. Yeah.
Basically your name. Okay.
Ujama Villages. And then you can go on Amazon and get the book, Got Reparations, 21 Questions, 21 Answers, or my publisher is bookbaby.com, and you would have to go to Google, Got Reparations, 21 Questions, 21 Answers, bookbaby.com, and you can find it there. My Facebook is Ujama Villages, UJAMAAVILLAGES at Facebook. So
we were having a discussion about the conception of the book. So
sure.
You were at the board.
So I was at the task force, and they were having discussions. I kind of walked in a little bit late, but some lady came running out crying. And I'm a protector, so I was worried about what was going on with her. But she was saying that they were taking away the ability for African Americans to claim their native heritage here in the jargon, in the nomenclature for the reparations in terms of who receives it.
Okay,
because a lot of folks will have native blood in them, the Choctaw, the Cherokee, the Blackfoot. And so she was upset about that because, kind of takes away the ability for African Americans to claim their native heritage.
Everybody owned slaves.
Right.
Native American tribes owned slaves.
Absolutely.
Which is a discussion that we can have another time. But the bottom line is that everyone wanted to or tried to own slaves in America.
So anyway, I walked in on that, and then but the conversations that I listened to at the task force meeting inspired me to bring a commentary that I think was not being right. And really that was jaded, or, that was not jaded with finance or somebody behind me, and I thought that
someone
was
that had skin in the game,
that part, so that I could be persuaded to come with a slant that, is not necessarily, I think, the best. So I wanted to come with a Q&A conversation because it's a great way to get, the juices flowing and talking about the conversation. But, the main thing was to not focus so much on money, even though money is a issue that we want to discuss. And that's why I wrote the poem as well, Reparations, No Money Down, so that we could actually start looking at what is the true essence of this conversation with reparations, thus the questions and
So could you
answers.
tell us about 40 Acres and a Mule
Right. So General Sherman, William Sherman, was a general in the military, the Civil War.
Mhm.
He gave his 11,000 black troops 400,000 acres. That's running from Charleston, South Carolina to Jacksonville, Florida, for about 245 miles, and then 30 miles from the shores of South Carolina and Florida, 30 miles inland. So
would you show me there was actually a 40 acres that was supposed to go to us, but it never did?
Right. Well, it initially was granted to us, and I think 2 years later, Andrew Johnson vetoed it. Yeah, they considered
Jackson or Johnson?
Jackson, Andrew Jackson,
Okay.
Jackson vetoed it. But a lot of African Americans stayed in that area, so it's still heavily populated by African Americans. But it's funny because I was interviewed in the San Francisco Bayview, and one of the questions that the interviewer asked me was, what would life be like if we would have actually
gotten the 40 acres
and kept it? And I was so excited. So that, I do have some YouTubes that I put about that. But anyway, so yeah, that's pretty much the inspiration behind the book. I've been doing reparations work, if you will, not necessarily calling it that, but community redevelopment, healing our community, helping us understand how we can be green, sustainable, and ecological with a cultural eye that would allow us to address our specific needs and our issues. So, yep.
Well, I gotta, because we're gonna intersperse reparations with this entire conversation.
Sure.
And one of the things I noted that recently, two black men in Mississippi, Trey Reed and Corey Zappas, were found hanging in a tree. And of course, the authorities call it suicide. And it brought me back to Billie Holiday, and she sings the issue around trees bearing strange fruit. Again, back to reparations, saying to correct the wrong that has happened to us. And one of those wrongs that happened to us is lynching.
Absolutely.
And we are now in 2025, and it also brought me to the context of again, in the history of American slavery and Jim Crow and all those things, and the Christian movement,
right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah. I have actually wrote about lynching in here, and one of the questions, actually question 3. So, I could even read
I love you, because, well, a little bit, the backdrop is that in Mississippi, Billie Holiday's Strange Fruit talks about the political narrative that we're dealing with today. So let's hear your discussion around lynching.
Absolutely. So we're talking about case in point histories that we can look at in terms of what happened to black people in America for us to make a claim for reparations. And so I talk about lynching as one of the key things, as we were saying. At this time, we must discuss a brief history of lynching in this country. The most stringent punishment and form of dehumanization was hanging black people. Taking the life of a black person was not even considered a crime in U.S. law at one time. Ida B. Wells is known for her book, Red Record, in which she documents 100 years of lynching in American history. The many different situations in which a black man or woman was lynched sheds light on the pathology of white people and society. Talking about lynch mobs. It also sheds light on the fear imposed on black people and society, and how that conditioned the behavior of black people in American society. This is a quote from a book I'll speak on called Lynchings in America, The American Experience. Lynchings were frequently committed with the most flagrant public display, like executions by guillotine in medieval times. Lynchings were often advertised in newspapers and drew large crowds of white families. They were kind of vigilantism. Southern white men saw themselves as protectors of their way of life and their white women. In the South, an estimated 2 or 3 blacks were lynched each week in the late 19th and early 20th century. In Mississippi alone, 500 blacks were lynched from the 1800s to 1955. Nationwide, the figure climbed to nearly 5,000.
And the point of that is lynching as a terror, and this whole concept around Billie Holiday talking about strange fruit. So the trees of the South hung men strange fruit, right? And she never was the same after doing that song. It was written by a Jewish man, but Mississippi at that time had the highest numbers of recorded lynchings. And the killing was justified under the guise of maintaining order, as you were saying, and Christian morality.
Absolutely.
But in reality, they upheld white supremacy and terrorized black people into social and political submission, or attempted to. A little bit about Billie Holiday and the song "Strange Fruit." It was written by a guy named Albert Myrtle. He was a Jewish school teacher and was performed famously by Billie. And that's why I became aware of her as a black woman, me as a man growing up and loving her music. I didn't know why. Some people, as you grew up, Duke Ellington, for folks that go there, Louis Armstrong, all those folks, their music had a drive that drew Miles, definitely, and John Coltrane, definitely. It's a music that drew you to them. Our parents listened to, and we kind of got out of it because we went to rhythm and blues, and again, groups of men singing,
right? Trying to sing our way out of it.
With trauma, right? And so I think that one of the mentions, this is some of the stuff about GPT Chester says, when black men are found hanging from trees today, and authorities quickly rule them suicide, it stirs deep suspicion in black communities. Even if the deaths were suicide, the imaginary carries traumatic weight tied to the racial violence.
Yeah. I mean, just think about it, man. Honestly, who's thinking about hanging themselves? Like, for real. Let's just be practical on that level. Like,
these were two young men.
Yeah. Somebody say, hey, I think I'm going to hang myself. I don't think so. I mean, you've seen potentially people in jail who've been in jail, who've taken the sheets and have tried to end their life, something like that.
Epstein committed suicide?
Yeah, I don't really know about that. I mean, he's a billionaire. He could very well still be alive and had a double, who knows? 'Cause he's got so much money. And at certain levels, I think, politics are dramatized. Is why, Trump talks about fake news,
We're going to get into that. But the bottom line is that in the conversations around reparations, people consider that fake. They consider it being a handout.
Right.
And in reality, it's a small pittance for an economy that was driven for 300 years on free labor.
Well, technically, the reparations historically has been for the winner, the victor. And if you look up war reparations, usually the one that's actually the winner sues the loser for what they've lost. So only in recent times have we almost flipped that idea of what reparations means for the victims of crimes against humanity, or for the loser who has wants to recoup some losses. But the working definition that I'm familiar with is reparations means to repair the damage. And so when we look at repair, it does not necessarily mean money. That's my poem, but we're talking about actually fixing something that was disrupted or interrupted or broken. And so
how long for the poem? What's your creative process to doing something like that in the series of works that you do? How do you decide on what you're going to discuss?
Yeah, I mean, I just kind of go into a space mentally of feeling and trying to draw out the feeling that I'm trying to elicit from my audience, whoever's interested in my poetry or my written works. And the conversation about no money down goes beyond money, because really at the end of the day we have money. We got 1.6 trillion in disposable income. I mean, if you look at the reports that have come out on our buying power, and so but 98% of that we spend outside of our community. So that's where I begin to look at, well, this is not a sustainable equation.
Right.
I mean, we got money, but now we're not circulating it. So what's the real issue? Is it the money?
Well,
or is it our interpersonal relationships that's not necessarily copacetic to where we are not believing and respecting one another's, business or wanting to circulate and put money in other Black folks' pockets?
well, one aspect I think to that, and we're seeing now, is the use of religion, and particularly an ideology of white nationalism and Christian issues, and how that shapes where we're at. So, for example, this is again back to this issue around reparations, slavery's legacy. Slavery's legacy, enslavement, was often defended by white Christian slave holders as biblically ordained, showing how religion was weaponized to rationalize oppression. Jim Crow era, post-slavery laws segregated and disenfranchised Black Americans. Lynching was not just tolerated, but often celebrated in some communities, and sometimes even after church services. Can you imagine that? Going to church in the morning, then watching a Black man burnt and lynched and his penis cut off and
Right.
him, mutilated.
Right.
What kind of mindset is that?
Certainly.
It's the same. Well,
yeah. Well, the picnics.
Oh, yeah, pick a brother, huh?
That's what they had.
Go pick a nigga, right?
Train rides.
That's why you don't say picnic. It means pick a nigga as opposed to barbecue, right?
Either one. I mean, either one. That's
not
why
cool.
we have our backyard cookouts.
Well,
I mean,
really,
right.
But religion plays a very strong role in our enslavement,
Mhm.
and the discussion around reparations has to include the psychosocial issues to our enslavement, as opposed to just the physical slavery. If it was just physical slavery, we'd have been able to leave a long time ago.
Yeah.
It was a whole. It was the weight of the U.S. government on your back.
Well, Ida B. Wells, in the book Red Record, that's one of the things she discusses, is that the lynching was to deter economic, competition.
And progress, right?
Right,
Yeah.
competition, because she actually witnessed 3 of her colleagues who owned a grocery store where she lived. I'm trying to remember where she was from. I can't recall right now, but I want to say Mississippi. Yeah,
I want to say Mississippi.
absolutely. But she witnessed 3 of her colleagues lynched because they were doing well. The grocery store was thriving and it was doing well. And that, again, was the motivation behind the attack on the Black towns. And I go into that, having that conversation as well.
And I think in closer to home now, in 2025, we have, Charlie Kirk, right, and
Mhm.
white Christian nationalism. And other people that don't know him, Kirk is a leading figure in the current white Christian nationalist movement, now deceased, called Turning Point, and he frames Christianity and patriotism as inseparable. So portraying multiculturalism, secularism, and racial justice activism as threats.
Mhm.
So this is the individual that they are provide such a high esteem to, government funeral, white women crying. And I have no problem with white women crying. First off, I don't think political violence should be condoned. The murder, right. I respect that.
Definitely.
I wish him his best in his journey, his travel, and his family some peace. But as I was saying last week, words matter. They always have matter, and they always will.
Certainly.
So Malcolm would say the chickens are coming home to roost.
Right.
And he said this about John F. Kennedy's assassination,
Right.
which he took a lot of heat from. And always our discussions around reparations is a discussion around whenever you are out front like you are with reparations,
Yes.
saying what you're saying, it's always going to be an issue.
Certainly.
Because, go down.
Well, I post on TikTok, my TikTok has got reparations 21. I'm always met with, people who I think
Angst.
are blatantly trying to
Inside you.
but I always push the heart button. It's all love because I'm trying to teach. So I'm not really backlashing and trying to tell people they're racist or this, because a lot of it is just ignorance.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And they just want me to say something wrong so that then they can use that as fuel against me. which I'm not.
One of my common phrases throughout my life and program, the lies are truth, truth's a lie.
Right.
Right. And so whenever you're speaking the truth, people that don't like it will say it's a lie, and we're seeing it, and we'll create it as a lie.
Right.
So
right. The other thing is, people like to say I'm creating division and divisiveness, but one of the main things I'm pointing out in the book is I'm suggesting is that we need to revisit the idea of community development along sustainable and green and ecological lines, because when we look at the axiom, the proverb, it takes a whole village to raise a child. That means that the whole community is involved in the development of that black,
that black child,
human being, that child. You know what I mean? And so, what does that community look like? What's the infrastructure for it? And I'm telling my audience, I'm simply doing what other groups are doing. We have Chinatown, we got Koreatown, Japantown, Polish town, Germantown, Jewish town, Italian town, French town, little Bangladesh town, little Mexico's,
Korean town.
Right. And so they do that because they want to make sure they can insulate themselves from the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant
traumas and trauma.
Right. Like this guy who's just, assassinated, so that they can take care of their children. They can raise their children. So that's all I'm arguing. But anytime we come out, it's just, I don't know what it is.
Well, again, I always say that we should not be surprised that what 300 years of slavery can do to you, to a human being, to your DNA, to your psyche.
Well, I'll tell you.
So I think that for me personally, I thought that there's always been a disconnect about not understanding the historical context in which we've been brought and lived in this country, what the realities are. And the historical context isn't that far off. In fact, not very far from what we're dealing in reality. And the discussion for us is that we are very loving, and we would never think of, as a group of people, trying to sabotage and assault and do all the things you do to undermine a community,
right,
in their existence. But that's what's going on.
Yeah.
And
well, I think we're mostly a peaceful people,
I think so,
for the most part. When you look at the civilizations that we've developed, the war, obviously all human beings have experienced those levels of,
but the discussion about us being violent and criminal does not hold up with the numbers. Right. The numbers are mostly more majority white. In fact, when you look at killings, it's young white men killing, right? Young white men killing other young white men.
Right.
So I'm saying in terms of the numbers per se.
Yeah.
Again, I think that why this conversation is important is because we are trying to have a discussion about when you wrong somebody. First of all, you have to think you wronged them.
Right. Got to acknowledge it.
If you don't acknowledge it, then it's something you carry out through history, and then you want to change history because it doesn't fit your paradigm.
Right. Cognitive dissonance is the name.
Psychologically.
Right.
Dr. Jury of post-traumatic slave disorder.
Right.
Syndrome. No, she calls it syndrome.
Right.
We have to have these kind of conversations. We can't be silent. So that's why you're on today, because it's like you were saying, when everything was going back and forth, and we just we find peace and understanding in a space that says that we should be here.
And the urban setting, creates a dynamic to where the resources are not as readily available for everybody, and so it becomes a powder keg waiting to explode. And so.
Well, I think too what has happened in this particular iteration of America, pulling yourself up by your bootstraps, depending on who you were, and if they want you to pull you up by your bootstraps. If not, it was an issue.
Right.
I think now other communities are experiencing what we've experienced for 300 years, because I think the discussion is by other communities was that we weren't working as hard, and we just didn't know how to work in the system and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
So
paired with trauma.
Oh yeah.
And just the fear of reprisal by white lynch mobs.
Again, violence is a tool.
and then they just parlayed it into the police. And,
well, yeah, definitely. The original Ku Klux Klan were policemen.
Right.
And religious policemen,
slave catchers,
all that.
It's all.
I mean, it's all intertwined.
Right.
And now you see it played out nice.
Absolutely.
So
yeah,
the discussion around, can someone come to you and take you out of your bed? Yes. And if you don't speak, you're next, and that's what's going on.
Right.
So a lot of this has been kind of the distance from a standpoint of saying that community is not important. They don't belong. They don't belong to exist. They should not have the same rights as all of us. And which puts themselves, again, that dynamic of pedestal, dynamic of empowerment, of entitlement,
and
which leads to
it
environment.
Gives them justification to come after the people that they victimized in the first place.
There you go. My point.
Right.
It's understandable when you want to. We were talking points back to Germany in the 1940s.
Mm-hmm.
Hitler was unknown. He was nothing,
mm-hmm.
And when he went to jail and wrote the book Mein Kampf, he comes out, and through government and
mm-hmm.
through particularly a attack on the Jews, creates this whole country. And so how does a society move from a inclusive society to degradation and picking one group over another group, and as a literally piece trying to exterminate?
Well, Francis Course Welsing in the ISIS papers talks about, white genetic fear of annihilation, white fear of genetic annihilation. And that's also a drive. But, I don't want to focus so much on the white folks, but to just say more so that, they bred Black people as well. They bred slaves. They bred them to be a particular kind of way to work.
I have wanted, and I'm going to have to do the research on basically the Sex plantations.
Yeah,
and
that's definitely worth looking at.
It's one that I've had to wrap my head around first. So you wrap your head as a intelligent person around the concept of slavery and the concept of it as an institution and what it meant to be institutionally and structurally developed to suppress another group of people.
Right.
Then what does that entail? It entails everything from the time they're born to the time they die.
Absolutely.
So
cradle to grave.
And also in their appropriation and the creation, because at one point in time you could no longer bring slaves from another country.
Mm-hmm.
That ended because they were playing out the world stage, I believe, and realized that they were bringing an institution on the world stage, they would be laughed out.
Right.
So it wasn't about slavery; it was about how they wanted to appear on the world stage.
Certainly. Right.
So, I mean, but
so
it encouraged, this whole issue encouraged our suspicion, Black communities. It's a continual racial terror that hangs and addresses us. Again, back to reparations.
Mm-hmm.
This has been a financial terror on us. This has been a community terror on us. And they have not wanted to make it right. So, in the very definition of reparations, there would be something you would want to correct, given the fact that you created it. Right.
But they would have to acknowledge
I agree.
What they did. And again, it's an embarrassment in a sense to. You know what I mean?
Well, and again, not only that, is to take religion and violence. The white Christian nationalist rhetoric has historically been tied to racial violence, and it's a modern expression can still be perpetuated in dehumanization. So, walking down the street as a Black man and you get pulled over, just like, and you look like somebody just robbed the corner bank, which no has any money in it. Right.
This is I want to read something taken from one of the questions. It's called Slavery and the Black Family, because it ties into what we're speaking about right now. The question is question 11. What do you know about the history of the Black family in America? And we're talking about breeding, and we're talking about just how we were affected through this process. Trauma. But here it is. It's a short paragraph. It says,
please read it.
At this point, one is brought up short. Slavery, that vast, cruel system of organized repression that denied that denied the slaves the right to marry, vote, sue, or take an oath, withheld from them the proceeds of their own labor and the slave block, exposed them to their owner's lash, and the chance that if they married, they or their spouses would be sold to a new owner, refused them the right to buy property. This inhumane bondage apparently had little or no effect on family life, but moving as free people to a big city did. This is an extraordinary claim. The greatest social disorder ever to befall a free society did not weaken families, but urban migration did. And this is taken from Slavery in the Black Family by James Q. Wilson. But, this kind of ties into the trauma that we experienced in slavery. And even then, that was not considered, according to this author, the most traumatic thing, but it was moving into an urbanized setting, which further basically exacerbated our trauma by separating us according to class, according to professions, and then dividing the Black family eventually with the no man in the house policy and social welfare and continuing our trauma.
They note a particular cycle from slavery to Jim Crow to mass incarceration to modern white nationalism. It's a through line in systemic racial control. And each new era, we just repackage the same logic. We're seeing that now.
Right.
So the discussion around that is, this is not something that we created. It was created to affect us. And every step was created to suppress us. And now the new issue is that, well, none of this really happened. Slavery didn't really happen. It was a good thing. Slavery was a good thing.
Right. Manifest destiny.
Right. I'm just saying, so from, it's like when someone's urinating in your face and calling it rain.
Right.
That's what's going on here.
Yeah.
And so it's just a larger discussion of this disrespect and the trauma that's been invoked on us for 300 years. It just continues. And it's,
like on the flip side, though, when you look at how we were breeded and like the sex plantations and how they were trying to create these bucks, that could work, and then the women, obviously the white man would always have a Black woman next to him as a way to kind of, create that power dynamic, which to this day is, still being played out with the relationships of Black men and women. But, consider that all of those generations of very strong Black folks that was bred to just work are now all of a sudden free. And now, the biggest issue is we're very powerful. We're very powerful people. Our genetic stock, if you will, has been made powerful just due to the process of, making the super slave, you know what I'm saying? And so it's played out in music. It's played out in sports. I mean, it's played out everywhere to where, scientists know that Black genes are the dominant genes, and the effect that Black genes has on a human, gives us so many extra sensory perceptive abilities and qualities that, that's why you see the what's the name? Prince of England married a high yellow sister, and I believe even the Queen of England has a little bit of Black blood in her too.
The whole discussion around melanin and it's which makes us skin black, right? And that what powerful force that is in terms of creation, and they're using the computer chips now, which is kind of weird. But I think that we manifest so much power as being the original purveyors of the mitochondrial DNA, that from the beginning,
the original human.
There you go, the human. And now at this point in my life, I understand why people are mad.
Yeah, it's a jealousy.
Of course it is. It's like, how dare you create me?
Well, because the narrative is we didn't do nothing.
Right.
We didn't discover nothing. We were backward. We were primitive. We had the bone in the nose, walking naked, with the lions. You know what I'm saying? And with a spear and a loincloth.
I'm on. So we got
30 minutes, I think.
about
20 something.
about 20 minutes, something like that. But I wanted to throw something else out because I try to do current events and stuff.
Yes.
The Canelo Crawford fight.
Okay.
And the reason why I bring it up is that I didn't realize the dynamic that was going on until you look for the white guy would say the rest of the story. So I asked GPT, I said, Canelo, and first of all, the dynamic is that Crawford went up 2 weight classes in order to fight him.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a bigger guy hitting a smaller guy.
Okay.
And so
I'm not familiar with the fight. I'm sorry. I'm not. I gotta check it now.
Man.
So I'm like,
well, because it's a cultural thing.
Okay.
It's how
it's black versus white. Is that?
He's Hispanic.
Oh, Hispanic. Okay.
All right.
Okay.
So you'll be able to play off of it.
Sure.
I asked, what are the political and racial implications of the Crawford Canelo fight? He went up in weight class, considered to be a smaller fight in the historical example. What would fight mean? So, and the breakdown was that Terence Crawford defeated Canelo Alvarez by unanimous decision to become the undisputed super heavy middleweight champion. Crawford had to move up 2 classes, and the fight was heavily commercialized by the Zoffa boxing, which is tied to Saudi investments. So I'm just saying, here's these 2 men of color, one
right.
Hispanic, Mexico,
right,
one African American, smaller, larger. And I just wasn't hearing the discussions around that Crawford was going to get beat up because I already thought Crawford was a really good fighter. And if you get in the ring with,
Crawford's the brother, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And so it said, so the question is that Conley is a Mexican star versus Crawford, an African American fighter, revives long-standing cultural and national boxing rivalry, U.S., Mexico, Latino versus Black narratives that go beyond the sport. Why is this important? Because we all were enslaved.
Well, also too, look at all of the sanctuary cities that are basically we're predominantly black, like Chicago, Chicago, California, where you have almost a migration of Hispanics that are moving into predominantly black areas too. And that's another dynamic that's being played, I think, to pit us against one another. Well, really, at the end of the day.
That's why I brought it up.
Yeah.
I mean, so, and the point of it is, it says that he moved up 2 classes. It says that when you get into it, it says legacy, respect, and recognition of sport. It says Crawford moved up 2 weight classes is a big risk if it reflects a desire not just for financial gain, but for legacy. Mm-hmm. So we always got to do more.
Right.
He just couldn't be the best fighter. He owns like 4 or 5 belts. He always has to challenge himself because, in his case, I understand, they wouldn't give him a big fight. Mm-hmm. So he's fighting all these guys he's whipping. In fact, he goes through all classes and whips them.
Okay.
But then he gets with Canelo.
Kind of like, well, I was thinking about the Tyson fight where he fought that other guy. I forgot his name.
When he bit his ear?
Irish guy. No. The one that he just fought, like at age 55.
I know you're talking about.
Right. So I was thinking about that.
Well, again, Muhammad Ali had to fight longer than he should. If he had stopped fighting about 3 years, he probably wouldn't have got Parkinson's, or it wouldn't be as bad as it was. Mm-hmm. So he had been, they had suspended him. He couldn't fight for 3 years because he wouldn't go into the military. And you play those tapes about him not fighting. He said, though, no Viet Cong never called me nigger.
Right.
So I'm just saying, you see the bigger picture of these issues, and then these micro issues where you got 2 men of color having the discussion about, and one trying to do legacy, and one say, man, I'm taking the money. Because he could do that. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Crawford couldn't do that. Like, we can't not speak. Right. We don't have that option not to speak. We don't have the option not to we can't be in the background. Indeed. Let someone do the dirty work.
Right.
So, exactly. I mean, part of this is reparations. It's about, where we at, right. How we have discussions, how our lives were changed by factors out of our control. Mm-hmm. Like now, sometimes you have to wait till you can come through the storm. Right. You got to get through it. You got to keep it moving.
Absolutely.
because it ain't gonna be your way. And they said that basically, um, it's about it's about again the Saudi investment. It's about a foreign group taking 2 men of color, 1 African American, and 1 Mexican, and making money off of them.
Right. Right. Perpetuating right.
Okay. Right. And what also got me into this was Conference said he said he prayed that he was glad that everybody was able to go home because many times in the fighter doesn't go home.
Mm-hmm.
He dies.
Wow.
Or he gets injured.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we dealing with,
Absolutely.
And so we don't have a choice. And we run the risk also of getting injured or dying.
Right.
And speaking the truth.
Yeah.
So kind of that's why you're here. Has it been a boxing match for us? Of course it has.
Certainly. Shadow boxing.
Fighting that unknown enemy, fighting that person. When Ali said that he had to fight the crowd, he had to fight
the media.
Right. He had to fight the referee, but he didn't have to fight his corner.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And we have not had a place to go home to. We've always had we fight in the corner.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And then one thing I do talk about even on my TikToks is I'm not really asking for a handout with this reparations conversation. I'm more so suggesting that we do what's called internal reparations, like self-referral. Like the fight actually is within ourselves. At the end of the day, we're fighting really our misconceptions, our miseducation, and our fears.
Miseducation of Negro.
Right. Of what reality is really about. Like, do we need to actually be asking someone outside of our experience to have empathy or high emotional intelligence capacity to consider where we're coming from? And that's the issue Ali had, any of the.
But I always say in the context of being an ex-slave.
Mm-hmm.
And again, you talk about genetic re-engineering. 300 years of child slavery, we re-engineer a roach.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
so I'm just saying. So that's the issue of the psychological, social, mental, political, spiritual.
Yes,
right. Fight that we're having. How about that?
Absolutely.
In the fight around reparations.
Certainly,
because
I agree.
The acknowledgement is that I told you I bring it together, right?
Yeah, really.
But and the Canelo Crawford fight is a bigger microcosm of people being manipulated. Absolutely. You have to go max cover to get the same thing that the other fight gets just because in his country he's considered white.
Right. Oh yeah. That's another.
So I'm saying
census.
Of course.
Right.
So the point of it is that you have to have these conversations because and I'm phasing back to the sister who wrote this book on her mother's brother who died in basically a prison camp.
Mm.
And it was a group of course, African American, right?
Mm-hmm.
All of them.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the stories that aren't told. These are the traumas that happen on every plantation in America. Monticello. Mm-hmm. So when you talk about visiting Monticello, you talk about visiting a plantation.
Right,
so or you take the picture of a black slave down who was whipped and then so bad his back was keloid. You put up Robert E. Lee,
mm-hmm.
who was one of the most vicious generals in the Civil War.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Right.
So why would you want me to honor or have in my community a statue that says that I don't exist and I'm not important?
Right. Just to totally discredit our position for seeking reparations, but that's why I say there has to be a shift with the reparations conversation across the country. I'm advocating that we not focus so much on trying to get the civic governments to understand reparations. We need to have private non-governmental organizations that are having our own in-house
Again,
discussions.
it's focused on behavior. It's
Yeah,
focused on how we think about ourselves and what the end point to this is.
certainly.
And it just can't be a house with a picket fence and two car garage
Right.
and chickens in your pot.
Nah,
It can't be just can't be
You
that.
can't have a black Santa Claus type of effect. Right, right.
And I think that the disconnect comes is because of the shame of slavery
Definitely.
and what it did to us psychologically and mentally and physically, particularly as black men.
Yeah. Heck yeah, they castrated
And
us, man.
of course, and I think that that's something that always needs to be realized and understood as we're talking about any of this kind of
And
stuff.
they doing it today.
Well, they never stop, right?
Right.
So
and black men are volunteering to do it.
well, well, again, a person without knowledge of themselves is like a tree with no roots,
Right.
and that means you're open to anything and everything.
Right. And I'm so with you on the trauma piece, because that really is the crux. One of the things that I go into the conversation of reparations when I'm talking to our folks, black folks, is I ask them, some real basic questions. It's like, how's your relationship with your parents? How's your relationship with your siblings? How's your relationship with your spouse, the mother of your children or the father of your children? How's your uncle? How's your auntie? How's your interpersonal relationships? How is your physical health? How is your mental health? Do you believe in God? Because all of these things will help us get a better look at just where we're coming from in the first place, which a lot of times, see, the reason why we're asking for money is because we think money is going to solve it. But at the end of the day, if we don't answer those questions I'm just talking about, we just will exacerbate and magnify the problems that we still have in our community.
You can name a number of African American entertainers that have money are unhappy as hell.
Right.
And in fact, it's become a burden for them. So I agree with you. And that gets back to behavior, gets back to the intellectual, political, and social capital.
Right.
And how that defines you. If you're just defined by the check that you get every 2 weeks or a month, then that's what your definition is.
Dr. Amos Wilson talks about our habits, and then Dr. Claude Anderson talks about appropriate and inappropriate behavior, which leads to our economic decisions. Yeah. Having single parent homes creates all kinds of decisions.
Well,
I that's not necessarily healthy.
That the creation of that, when you talk about, again, back to families that were separated, men snatched away from women snatched away from men, children snatched away from mothers and fathers, then that's the dynamic you have to work in. I keep saying this because we think we're just supposed to wake up and be normal. We think we're supposed to wake up and have, a garden wedding with, everybody watching and
right. And that's the key.
Unrealistic. How about that? Unrealistic expectation of the reality.
And one of the things, I'm glad you said that, because one of the questions that I talk about is the day after reparations, because it's not a lot of dialogue on what we think reparations will mean once we receive it. Here's a quote. I remember an exchange I had with an ADOS. This is an organization called African Descendants of Slaves, an advocate. And I asked him, what do you want for reparations? And he replied he wanted money. This, he said, with 50 others who were promoting the idea with him as a group in downtown Oakland at a protest. I reminded him that even after we receive money, we will have to heal the Black family. And do you know how he responded? A blank stare of non-connection. He kept emphasizing the need for money to be primary in solving our other issues, as if the disintegration of healthy and sustainable Black families is not central to our repair as a people or groups of people. Another thing he said that struck a chord with me was Black people deserve to kick up our feet after 400 years of free and discriminatory labor practices. I responded by saying, what about our children? Don't they deserve a better example of rebuilding our people besides no taxes and free living? He responded and said, the U.S. government owes us retribution. I agreed, but suggested that regardless of what they, white people, private businesses do, we, Black people, must reclaim Sankofa and retrieve a sustainable culture for the future. Again, he had kept insisting that America should be the initiator of change and repair amongst Black people by giving us reparations. As I've said before in other answers to earlier questions, is that we have yet to be clear and definitive about our repair.
No.
So, that just kind of gives you a little example. ADOS is one of those advocating groups for reparations, but, the interfamily dynamic, has a lot to do with why we are asking just for money or some kind of tax relief or housing. And, like there was a Japanese man sitting on the task force in San Francisco, and he said, I want to give Black people money and housing. And I said, come here. I said, let me talk to you. I say, because the highest single family parent homes in America is Black. Mm-hmm. So I say, you give us more homes, we're just going to have more single parent homes, and money, we got money. I say, but the issue is we're not circulating that money.
But again, what we're not doing is what we've been taught not to do.
The conditioning.
Right. And when in this history, when we tried to do it, let's just say Black Wall Street gets burned down.
Right. Attacked.
So my point is that you keep getting wounded. Well, if you do this and you do this, then everything fine. No, when we do this, you get intimidated. You come in and you bring the police to Washington, D.C., to L.A., to trying to talk about Oakland. Get out of here.
They created the conditions which created these places.
And again, that's my point. And Malcolm would say, the chickens are coming home to roost.
Yeah. I mean, it's just giggle, garbage in, garbage out. You reap what you sow. You can tell a fruit tree by the fruit it bears.
Well, and again, he said it with the concept that it was an ongoing piece.
Certainly.
And so this is, he dies in 1968, I think, but murdered, excuse me.
Right.
When I say died, that means you are laying down and all your children around you.
Right.
No, Martin was murdered.
Right.
Malcolm was murdered.
Indeed.
And because we're just so into it, John F. Kennedy was murdered too.
And assassinated,
basically. So the point of it is that political assassinations have been ongoing.
Certainly.
With the most peaceful people.
Certainly.
Right.
But that's why I say one of the main approaches that I'm advocating, this axiom, and I wish the audience could hear this and take it into their own circles of influence and who they're speaking to about reparations, about community development. If we just took this one saying, it takes a whole village to raise a child. I'm talking about for business, for social, for environmental, for political, economic, for physical, whatever. We know that child represents the best of all that we have. And if we make the children our focus instead of our political objectives, then we are doing ourselves more of a favor in giving ourselves longevity for the posterity of our people and the movement of us getting back and regenerating and restoring our people. That's so key. If I could just say that, that's so very, 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 very key. If we don't do anything, is that we focus on the development of healthy Black children. Totally. So key.
We've got about 5 minutes. It's been, the hour goes fast.
Yeah.
We got started late, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Want you to give the final word.
Sure.
A little bit about, some of the health initiatives that you want to involve with and how you think that discussion around health will again intersect behavior that will intersect, maybe reparations for us.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give you the final word.
Well, I want to give a shout out to Jaylne Brown. Want to shout out to the brother. He's advocating that we build Black Wall Street again. I think that's key. I also want to shout out to Ice Cube. Ice Cube created a contract with Black America booklet, 23 pages. And at the center of it is an image of the traditional archetype Black family. The Black family is the most important thing that we need to focus on in terms of the discussion of reparations. He asked me, is a mountain of gold and the Black woman? I'm taking the Black woman all the time. The mountain of gold. I mean, it looks good. It's like, ooh, wee, I could do a lot with that. But with a solid, holistic thinking Black woman, I can build a whole nation.
You got about 2 minutes left.
Yeah.
Final word.
Yeah. I want to say I'm grateful to the ancestors for giving me this message on my heart to share with the community. I believe if we focus on the development of our children, the development of the traditional Black family, and I know that's not everybody's thing, but that's where everyone comes from. Okay, to give us a base again in which to start again. Focus on agriculture. Growing our own food. Food is the basis of a sustainable, healthy nation. Those two things, family and food, if we make those central to our conversation with reparations under the guise of health, not political jousting and positional, power, that will help redevelop, repair, reboot, regenerate, restore our peoplehood. And this is about us getting back in touch with our humanity, the way that we express life, the way that we express our concepts of God, creation, reality, conflict resolution, and relating and communing with one another. That being said, I'm so grateful to you, dear brother George, for allowing me to come on this show and to address the reparations issue. Everybody needs to listen to this show a lot more. The brother has so much content and spirit that is a thing of love, a love supreme. Is what I say is this brother has. And since I've known him, he has been one that it cares, and he wants to bring genuine, real, unfettered, untainted content to the table. And this brother deserves your attention, and keep listening to his show, please.
We'll have you back in the Star Series.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Well, I want to thank everyone for coming through. Please be patient, be peaceful, love one another, and we'll see you next time.
Peace.